This is the second part of the tutorial on animating this Porsche. In the first part, we prepared the car, installed new wheels, and handled some initial setup. If you haven't done that yet, I recommend checking it out first. In this tutorial, we'll build a scene using free assets. Let's get to work. First, I downloaded a PBR texture from Megascans and scaled the plane to 10 by 10 meters. To enable displacement, we need to subdivide the plane. Right-click, Subdivide, then set it to 10 in the drop-down menu. After that, I applied a subdivision modifier and two array modifiers, one for road width and the other for road length. In the Item tab, we can tweak the array parameters to extend the road. I initially set it to 250 meters, but will increase it later. Alright, let's start rigging the car. We'll be using Launch Control, a flexible add-on for animation that provides almost automatic rigging and some useful features, such as a speedometer and more. If you don't have this add-on, you can use Rig a Car instead. It's a decent tool, but unfortunately, it's no longer being updated. Getting it to work on the latest Blender versions requires some extra effort. First, we need to rename the car parts correctly. In the Launch Control menu, check the Quick Tag toolbox. You'll see buttons with different part names. Simply select a car part and click the corresponding button. For example, select the car body and press Body. That's all there is to it. Next, click Rig Vehicle, and the car is ready for animation. I removed the ground that comes with the rig and reassigned our custom road. Before refining the animation, I like to create a rough animation of the car and camera. This helps visualize where to focus when building the scene. So for now, we'll just animate the car and camera moving in a straight line. The camera should have a roughly final angle and speed to give us a general idea of the scene's composition. One of Launch Control's great features is the ability to adjust car settings like wheel camber and suspension height. I experimented a bit, increasing the wheel camber. I'm not sure if that makes sense in reality, but it looks good. Now let's build the actual scene. The framing and atmosphere were inspired by car highway ride videos, and I wanted to create something similar. I added a cube and stretched it along the road to check how high the barrier should be. Should it be a tall sound wall or a low road divider? I downloaded a highway interchange model from CG Trader. It's highly detailed and looks great. The only issue? It was made up of a million small pieces. Since I didn't need that level of modularity, I joined them into two main objects, the interchange itself and a straight highway section. With this model, the final look of the scene started taking shape. Now, we just need to position the highway for the best composition. I aimed for a dramatic perspective, making it feel like we're dry. Railway bridge. I downloaded a railway bridge model, and while it was decent, it had no materials. I grabbed a concrete texture from BlenderKit and applied it. Since the bridge won't be highly visible, there's no need for extreme detail. Next, I added a train model, link in the description. Each train part was parented to empties, so I had to unparent everything. Right-click Parent, Clear with Transformation. And then reparent the train to a single object. Control-P, Object Keep Transformation. Then, I duplicated train cars, extended the train, and placed it on the bridge. The animation is simple. First keyframe at the start, last keyframe at the end. To make the movement linear, select both keyframes, press V, then choose Vector. I also parented the train to the bridge, so if I move the bridge, the train moves with it. The bridge was too high, leaving too much empty space in the scene, so I lowered it slightly and adjusted the highway to avoid overlap. I removed a metal structure and added railway poles instead. Fence. The previous fence didn't look great, so I downloaded a new barrier from BlenderKit. I placed it along the road and applied an array modifier. To remove gaps between the barriers, I adjusted the factor X value slightly, 0.980. Next, I added a wire fence. This one matched the scene's style much better. I removed the barbed wire and applied an array modifier to extend the fence along the road. Droplets. I thought adding water droplets on the car and puddles on the ground would enhance the realism, making it look like it had recently rained. There are many droplet generators, but we can use a shortcut by downloading a soda can model from BlenderKit. This model has a geometry node setup for generating droplets. Once imported, we can apply the droplet setup to any object. In the Modifiers tab, add a Geometry Nodes modifier and select Water Droplets. As in the previous tutorial, I also wanted to add some roughness variation to the car's glass. If you want a detailed explanation, check out the first video. Puddles. Alright, I'll show you how to create puddles, but I have to admit, I stole this technique from Blender Guru. This guy came up with the method so long ago that back then, I was still shitting my pants. That is to say, 6 months ago. Now, let's create the wet surface effect. First, add a noise texture and a mix color node. Plug the noise into the factor input. Connect the original roughness to the first input and set the second input to 0 roughness, fully reflective like water. Now, dry areas remain rough, while wet areas become smooth. Next, I added a map range node to increase contrast, making the puddles more distinct. Now, there is a clear separation between wet and dry areas. To refine the effect, I duplicated the mix color node. In the first input, I connected the normal map. And in the second, I used pure blue, 001, to create an absolutely smooth water surface. In reality, wet surfaces appear darker than dry ones. To achieve this, I took another mix color node, connected it to base color, and set the blending mode to multiply, which darkens the wet areas. I used the same noise texture as a mask and added a map range node to control the strength of the darkening. Now, the wet areas genuinely look wet. At this stage, the puddles looked somewhat unnatural. They were just randomly scattered across the surface. In real life, water collects in low areas rather than spreading evenly. To fix this, I used a height map. I plugged the height map into the mix node, blending it with the noise texture. I changed the blend mode to overlay, allowing the height map to influence puddle placement. Now, puddles form naturally in lower areas, just like in real life. Camera setup. Now let's set up the camera. I created a new camera, but the angle was off, so I went to Object Clear, Clear Rotation. Then, I rotated it 90 degrees so that it was facing straight ahead. I added a sphere empty, which will help control the camera's rotation. I selected the camera first, then the empty, and parented them together. Control P Object Keep Transformation. Next, I added another plane axis empty, which will follow a curve. I parented the sphere empty to this new empty. I added a second plane axis empty, which will be used for camera tracking. Then I applied a track to constraint to the sphere empty, making sure the camera always points in the correct direction. At this point, the camera rotated incorrectly, so I adjusted its tilt by 90 degrees. Finally, I attached the camera tracking empty to the car, parenting it to the launch control rig using a child of constraint. In the previous video on material preparation, we created a gray car paint, but now I thought it would be cool to change it to white. To make the paint appear less metallic, we simply need to lower the base coat, metallic parameter. I also downloaded a 3D scan of a person from BlenderKit. Since some parts won't be visible from our camera angle, I trimmed unnecessary geometry and placed the model inside the car. Then, I parented the scan to the car so that it moves along with the vehicle. There's not much to say about the actual animation process, just follow along with the tutorial. The main goal is to make the car's movement look smooth and natural. Yes, the car is fast and sharp, but it shouldn't feel like a toy. To achieve this, I made sure that acceleration and deceleration felt balanced. Sudden jerky movements would make the animation look unrealistic, so I focused on weight and inertia. That's it. I hope this tutorial was at least somewhat helpful. In the next video, I plan to create a scene with a suspended car in an interior setting. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions and tell me what you think about the tutorial.